There are some very tough economic times ahead right now, and that includes the US, but also the UK, and also Canada and Australia, and so many other places. You see, what's happening right now is not a simple matter of coincidence. What's happening here is a cycle. And I'm going to show you some of the elements of that cycle today. Let's begin. Everything I wrote about in my first book essentially highlights the fact that we can continue on with these silly games as long as interest rates remain extremely low. However, when they do increase interest rates, and that was the whole point, was eventually they have to increase interest rates, we're going to be in big trouble. The longer they stretch that out for, the worse the problem is going to be. And this was one that I consistently have been talking about on my channel here for years. More Americans tap their home equity for financial safety net. HELOCs, home equity line of credit, were up 40% in the second quarter from a year earlier. Here's what homeowners should know before they take out their home equity. And just trying to basically give you some tips around that. I think it's important to address the fact that people had built up a lot of equity over the last few years. Their home price has gone up substantially, and they thought everything was great. Now, however, they're strapped for cash. And this doesn't, represent everybody. Not everybody is in this situation. But what do we see here? Generally taking on much more debt. Isn't that the way it is? Credit card debt is up. You look at the home equity line of credit usage. And yes, you might be able to take the percentage and say, well, it's not much based on this or that. The point is, more debt is being taken out right now. We see the tough economic times, and the obvious response to that is a lot more debt. And that debt is at a higher interest rate. It's further compounding the whole situation. Let's look at this next aspect here. Thanksgiving meal prices rise to a new record high. And all this is really trying to highlight, it's one thing is that it's the same time every year, so they can measure it at the same period, and roughly the same things within that basket. That's all they're doing. And what this tells us is that the prices have risen to a level we've never seen before. So we know that food prices are up, and this doesn't seem like it's changing much anytime soon. Though the index has come down from its peak, it really doesn't show up like that at the supermarkets, okay? What do we have today? Well, we have a big problem. This is the total system leverage. Government, corporate, household margin, student loans. All of that, record high right now. But what's important here is that all of this has some sort of interest rate connected to it. And a lot of that is in a way that's variable, meaning as the debt's going up, the actual total amount because of the interest is also going up. This is an extremely big concern. Fed's daily sees rates rising at least another percentage point as pausing is off the table. So this is important as well because they're telling you, forecasting where interest rates will be. And so potentially you will see the Fed funds rate at 5% before they stop. 5% on the Fed funds rate. People said that it would never rise above zero again. So to see it right now, in December, we're going to see it. I'm sure it's going to be a 50 basis point hike. And that means the Fed funds rate's at 4.5%. And then into next year, I believe maybe they'll do 25 basis points and then see how it goes. So that's their, not pivot, by the way, but that's their slowing down. And then they'll be able to hopefully somehow come up with an excuse of why, if inflation is still elevated, that they're not increasing interest rates. But that just shows you where they're going to be. So remember, all that debt, everything that people are taking out right now is at this higher and higher payments that they have to make. Credit card balances jump 15%, highest leap in over 20 years. as Americans fall deeper into debt. Understand, we're talking about the balances. So yeah, you can use your credit card, pay it off before the end of the month. You're all good. Nothing wrong there. But if you keep a balance, well, of course, I believe the average balance last time I checked anyway was $6,000. Now we're seeing that increasing. And of course, like I said, 18+%, that's going to really hit hard. Target shares plunge after retailer reports profit decline, warns of soft holiday quarter. They're not the only retailer having this issue, but it's just one. And the reason I mentioned this was that the consumer just isn't there like they were a year ago. And that's very evident. We're seeing examples of that all over the place. Now let's talk about everything to do with Europe and what this really means for us no matter where we are. ECB will do whatever is necessary to get inflation to 2%. So they're saying the same thing as what's happening with the Federal Reserve. They're basically saying, wait, we got to get inflation down, and we're going to do so by making sure that our interest rates are higher than that level of inflation. And so, despite the thought that no way they're ever going to be able to actually increase their interest rates, they have been. Germany steps up emergency cash plans to cope in a blackout. I mean, think about how unbelievable. Did you ever think that this would happen? Especially in a place like Germany. German authorities are stepping up preparations for emergency cash deliveries in case of a blackout to keep the economy running. I can't even believe it. The plans include the Bundesbank, Germany's central bank, hoarding extra billions to cope with a surge in demand and possible limits on withdrawals. What do you think that's talking about here? We're suggesting capital controls. We're suggesting here that people are not going to be able to take their money out of the bank. Think about that. Germany, my friends. This isn't Cyprus. Okay? UK inflation hits 41-year high of 11.1% as food and energy prices continue to soar. And this is basically just more related to this. Britain is bringing back austerity. It's just getting into the issues that what they believe. Oh yes, Brexit is the issue, and so we're going to blame it on Brexit, not the years of failed policies, not the problems that have been going on for a long time. We're just going to finger point at one thing, make it the boogeyman, and that's the end of that. London businesses lose confidence in the UK as inflation soars. It's not just London's businesses. Of course, it's all major cities are seeing basically the same thing, where if the consumer's not there, what do you think is going to be there for, just think about it for yourself, okay? I think it's important to look at this. You could see that confidence in the UK economy has plummeted among London's businesses, with the survey revealing that bosses are particularly worried about inflation. And I've shown you the same stats for CEOs all over the US, saying basically the same thing, okay? That's all I'm trying to say here. Same situation. And, I wanted to conclude with that. I had some more stuff, but I think I'll just conclude here and tell you that what we're seeing right now today is all the result of this cycle that we move through all the time. And it takes us from a point of which there's easy money, that things are booming, and then it flips over. And during these periods of time, people are in disbelief. But you look at the stock market, look, the S&P is at approximately 4,000 again. So you got to understand that the markets are not necessarily going to respond to the economy in the same way that you would think makes sense. But that's just the way it goes. Now, what we're seeing here could be yet another part of a dip down. We don't know. That only is revealed in time. The point is the economy, much more important than the markets, are sending some very clear signals about how weak things really are now. And why? Because of the activities of the central banks. Because they went easy money for so long, got everybody in businesses and nations, they're addicted to the easy money, and then that flipped in an instant. That's the way it goes. If you found this video informative, hit that subscribe button down below. I'll see you tomorrow.